And that was an interesting thing just as a band, like all like our entire well of ideas uh got destroyed there too. So we had to kind of start from scratch.
Wow, that's buff.
I mean, it's cool, whatever. I mean, I'm glad we're alive. So I'm glad no one was hurt.
Did you have any anxiety about going on tour again after that?
Yeah, it's funny. I've always been anxious about tour. Again, kind of owing to agoraphobia or whatever it is. I can't really figure out, I've kind of talked to people about it and no one really it I don't know. Could just be stage fright or something, but I was always anxious about touring. It was never my favorite thing because there's just this like I said, I was this kid, I was too scared to go to shows. So then like you live your life as shows, it's a real big change. So I was always scared of it. But um I wasn't really scared of the driving thing. I wasn't really scared of like the, van accidents and stuff. It's weird. In retrospect, I'm like, you should have been. That's really crazy. But I feel like it's this kind of rite of passage that everybody has, like, oh yeah, that was our van accident, like whatever.
Definitely.
I feel like every band has that story.
Oh, so like it happened, so the chances of it happening again are slim, is like the thinking.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, that's not really how that works. But okay, I mean, like you should still kind of be careful when you're driving. But
Well, and in a weird way, like a weird, totally backward way, it like legitimizes you as a band.
yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, it kind of does. It was kind of like this, it's a war stories. It's kind of one of those things. It was a very standard thing. Like, oh yeah, that was ours. Oh, our van accident was. But then then there are bands like I remember this band Count the Stars. We were on tour with them, and then not long after we'd been on tour with them, they had a van accident, and like it pretty much. I mean, this might be oversimplifying, but it seemed to nearly break up the band because, like, a couple guys were pretty badly injured, and then, and then they just financially, it really took a toll on them, and so it's weird because again, I probably should have taken it more seriously. I probably should have been more freaked out. But after the smoke clears and everyone's fine and no one's dead, I was like, cool, okay. Let's move on.
Going back to Animal Chin really quick, when I heard that you were a fan of Animal Chin, it did actually click because I feel like you can see similarities in your singing and Jamie's singing. Was he an influence on your singing style?
Oh yeah, of course. I didn't really know how to sing. It wasn't a thing that I consciously tried to do or thought about or anything. It was kind of a thing that, frankly, I didn't know people couldn't. I didn't know that it was a skill. Then Fall Out Boy kind of started, and I was just showing them songs that I had written. And as part of showing them songs, I mean, I knew like one bar chord on guitar. So I'm like, you know, kind of really rudimentary playing that while I sang these ideas. And it was funny. They were like, oh, you should sing. And I'm like, really? I mean, okay, sure. What do you think of the song? So then when we had to start playing, when we started, playing out, I was kind of confronted with like, people will consider you a singer now. You have to like think about what that means. You have to think about like what that sounds like. So I really didn't have much to rely on. Early on, especially, I was looking to Jamie, and I had kind of gotten into Saves the Day. So those two bands, it was like, try and sing like that. I'll try and sound like them. I did a lot of impersonations as a kid. That was like one of my things. I would do cartoon voices and stuff. And so singing wasn't a thing that I did as a serious thing. It was another silly voice. It was another impersonation. It was no different than me doing Elvis Costello or Christopher Walken or something. It was just another voice. And so when I had to do it in front of people, I had to find a voice to do it in. I didn't even know what I sounded like as a singer, you know? And so I was basically impersonating Jamie and impersonating Chris from Saves the Day, because that was the only thing that I was like, well, these are bands I like. I mean, this is what they sing like,
I mean, you can't really go wrong with those two as your influences. Those are pretty good singers.
Well, and that's the thing is that I still, I look back on those records and I'm like, yeah, I mean, I was very, kind of hard on your sleeve. And they both know that. I've talked to both of them at length about it, about how, how big a deal that was for me. But, I was a drummer and I took drums a lot more personally and seriously. But as a singer, for years, I mean, the band was on MTV and stuff before I was like maybe I'm a singer actually. Like maybe that's a thing that that I actually have to start taking seriously, because up to that point, I just thought of myself as impersonating my heroes.
Did you have the Misfits of Ska 2 comp?
Of course I did.
Okay, so you know the Animal Chin song on there, Time Out?
Yeah, of course.
And it has the part the I think it's like the bridge right before the breakdown.
Mhm.
And so there's like a long vocal and then Jamie sings really high.
Yeah.
The first time we played with Animal Chin, he was singing it a octave lower. Our whole band was standing there like pointing up like, "No, sing it high." And then so like the next time it came around, he like hit it high and we all lost our minds.
Yeah, I mean, he's got such a great voice and such a great tone, you know, when he goes really up high like that. Yeah, I mean, that compilation, that was a huge compilation for me. There were so many songs on that. I love that. There's a band, Absence, and that was, like, the only
Oh
thing
yeah.
I ever found of them was that. In the advent of YouTube, I think I tracked down their demo or something, maybe, like, 5 years ago or something, but before that, it was just this magical thing where there was this crazy demo, this crazy song on that comp where I was like, "What is this? I love this?"
Yeah, that's one of my favorite songs off that comp. Aaron and I talk about Misfits of Ska and Misfits of Ska 2 a lot because he sees Misfits of Ska 1 as like kind of the big turning point. And for me, it was Misfits of Ska 2. Like that was the one that really did it for me.
That was my preferred one, sorry to say.
I love that the Absence song is your favorite song on there too. That song's so crazy.
Yeah, man, it was a shredder, it was so crazy.
That band had 3 singers.
I know.
Link 80, when they did the last tour with Nick, they played a show with Absence, and Seth, the sax player, sent me pictures. It just looked like the weirdest band. It looked like Corn mixed with like Coming Correct, like mixed with Mustard Plug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So wild. I'm just opening this up again, looking at that record, looking at what was on there. Kimuri. I remember tracking that record down because that was amazing. Obviously, Link 80, Pocket Lint. That was a weird one because like that's another one of those bands that like I don't know that the band made as big a splash, but those members ended up being everywhere. Absence. Yeah, Thumper. I loved Thumper. I tracked down that record too.
Yeah, Adam brings Thumper up quite a bit.
Oh, they're so good live. I just remember just like whenever they would hit that breakdown in Backstabber, our whole band would be on the dance floor and we would all start hardcore dancing.
So ridiculous. That again, I got into hardcore through ska because there was so much ska-core stuff. The Hippos, I love the Hippos. That was one of my favorite records. That first one, I remember tracking that down. Pot Shot, I like that record too. I love this Bucko 9, but like spelled $9. Oh, the Eclectics. The Eclectics were a big band in Chicago too. That was another cast a fairly long shadow there. But yeah, that comp was a big deal for me.
Aaron's old band Flat Planet is the second to last track on that.
Oh yeah.
And that's Aaron singing on that track.
That's the only song I sing lead on. Well, I sing part lead on some songs, but that was the only one I sing lead on.
Nice.
Flat Planet was like my favorite band, like as a teenager, and they played with the Hippos in a barn. And I think actually I opened that show in like a shitty punk band.
Adam and I are both from a small town called Gilroy, California. So we were his introduction to ska, I think, because, we're the local band.
Yeah.
That's awesome. But that's the thing I think is so funny looking back on 90s ska especially, it was such a weird confluence of different things in a way that, because after that, that was my gateway. And then I got into two-tone ska. I remember going to Circuit City and looking for ska. And the only thing I could find was this, two-tone box set. And so it had, everything. It was like all their singles or something. So, that's where I got into Selector, and even Madness was on there and that kind of stuff. And then you get into traditional ska. And that was a whole other thing. I told my aunt, my aunt's awesome. She lived all over Africa for a lot of my childhood. And so she would come back with like just wild stuff. She brought me home. She had done a trip to Indonesia and brought me back an angklung, which is this obscure Indonesian, like it's kind of like a tuned rattle. Anyway, but so one time she said, what music are you into? I'm like, ska. And she came back with this, I don't know where she found it. But it was a traditional ska compilation, and it was like really deep cut stuff. I remember trying to remember who sang it. There's a song "Oil in My Lamp." that was like a traditional ska song, and there's this song, "The Beatles Just Gotta Go." It was like right when the Beatles came out, you know, it was a ska song about how lame the Beatles were. I'm like, "Well, I don't know that I agree with that, but it's a great song." And they even end the song with like, you know, "Don't wanna hold your hand." I'm like, "Great."